I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide a continuum of the highest quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. The Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership is comprised of individuals and organizations with one singular goal in mind of providing everyone with the opportunity to make the most of their lives. Over the years, bringing these organizations together has led to numerous collaborations that have resulted in positive outcomes for the individuals served. It should also be noted that this is the only community partnership that continues to meet monthly since the state eliminated the regional coordinator position in 2009. Today we'll discuss the impact that the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership has had locally and why the group continues to thrive. Now to discuss the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership in greater detail, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guest, Melinda White, CRC of Turning Point of Franklin County and Recovery Coach Supervisor for the NMC Emergency Department and the Vermont Blueprint Medical Assistance Treatment Lead. That is a mouthful. So Melinda, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And
for
it's
having
always
me,
great
Joe.
to see you. So let's start with why is the sustainability of the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership important to the community?
For me, Joe, I think this group, out of all the different organizations and initiatives and meetings that happen, the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership is, as you said in the beginning, one of the longer standing meetings. It is such a great opportunity for organizations that serve people, whether it's, healthcare, medical, mental health, substance use, nonprofit, small or large. It's really open to any organization in the community that has a vested interest in the well-being of our community. So I think that the fact that it's open, there's nobody that has to sign up, register, get permission. It's just a matter of having people show up and network, especially with the 8:30 to 9 a.m. arrival and networking time. People get a chance to build relationships. And the relationships are key to partnership, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned the 8:30 to 9 networking period. I can remember the days when that networking was at the end of the meeting, and the issue that we faced was if the meeting began promptly at 8:30, typically everybody wasn't in the room.
Right.
So as they would kind of stagger in, they would miss a part of the content of the meeting, which is important. So I think changing that, and you make a good point, that there's that half hour that people can connect, who in many instances, because of the way that they're going throughout the course of their month, they can't find the time perhaps. But it's maybe somebody that they really need to talk to about a particular initiative that maybe the two organizations can collaborate on, or that type of thing. But it does allow, you're right, that half hour to really kind of connect and maybe work out some details about a particular initiative before the actual meeting itself begins.
That's where, in the world I work in, oftentimes we talk about like the meeting before the meeting, the meeting after the meeting. And that's sometimes where those strongest collaborations do happen. It's not even during the actual business portion of the meeting. And also, like you said, people will stay after. And whether it's discussing with the presenter of the month, something they might have said, and then you see more partnerships and initiatives grow out of that one encounter. To me, that's why the community partnership is such a valuable meeting.
Yeah, and I can still remember now, from my lens, from NCSS, I can still remember when Jim Naylor, who at the time was the head of the Northwest Tech Center, Career and Tech Center, and he came with a question, and we started talking, and one thing led to another, And it really all had to do with their human services track, and they wanted to add mental health, but they weren't quite sure how, and what about HIPAA and all these other things. So anyway, out of that conversation, as you say, off of the agenda, in 2017, I believe, all of a sudden there was a mental health track, which still exists today. We actually have had some individuals who went through that program at BFA who have worked for NCSS. So the point being that that possibly would not have come to fruition, or maybe not as soon, if it weren't for that opportunity to kind of collaborate together. And our HR department and our various direct service divisions have done a great job of maintaining that since that point. So anyway, it's just an example of what you're talking about. You've kind of mentioned this to a degree, but what else separates this meeting from all the other meetings that people attend throughout the course of the month? Because as you know, there are many meetings that take place where there are various community partners at the table.
I think with this one, the nice thing about the community partnership is that it's not focused on any one area or topic. I can say I definitely attend a number of community meetings with many of the community partners that I see in this specific meeting. But we tend to be more focused on smaller goals or initiatives in those different meetings, whereas with the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership, we're able to learn from such a broad spectrum, like a broad volume of organizations. And I guess the best example I can think of is when I very first joined the partnership, it was HomeShare Vermont. I'd never heard of it, didn't know anything about it, and yet knowing that that was just one of so many resources I was able to start learning over the years. So now, even though I work supporting people with substance use or maybe homelessness, when I know that, hey, HomeShare is available, that's a great opportunity. But not only that, when we look at like whole community health and wellness, if I'm working with somebody, and again, the idea is we're going to focus on substance use, but they have food insecurity, and I don't have a place to refer them, how are they going, it's one of those, it's the idea of like, the person comes in with their pants on fire. You got to get the fire out before you start planning for the future. So in this scenario, because of the partnership, I know Brother Bob Beagley, Martha's Kitchen, I've heard them present. I know about the food shelf, the food banks, the different locations of those. So that's what everybody gets, that opportunity to get the wealth of knowledge on who are the partners and what do they do. And when you look at our listserv too, we have over 380, I think we're at 387 recipients on that listserv, so we can see their name. As you know, we sign people in, we have them put their email address, and then we do the Excel spreadsheet so people can data sort by organization and then seek maybe a person they heard say something that they decide, I want to connect with that person and see if we can collaborate on a group or a program or embedded services. So the opportunities are they're unlimited, because we've seen so many unique things happen as a result of this meeting because it's so broad in its objectives.
Yeah, and you're so right. And a lot of these presentations and that typically we might not be exposed to. I think the critical thing is that we all know, number one, no one organization can do it all for someone. Usually somebody who is dealing with organization A may also need some assistance from organization B to ensure that, holistically, their situation is being addressed. And I think that this does give us the opportunity to have organizations, like you said, learn about. The famous line I hear the most when these meetings end is, I had no idea. Whoever's presenting, I don't care what organization it is, how much people think they've got it all about what they do, and how narrow it might seem that whatever the programming is that they offer, inevitably, when somebody expresses what they really do, usually people are very amazed and didn't realize. And I think that's one of the beauties, so that, as you said, people can refer people to the right organizations when they need to.
Right. I think, too, when I look at working with people who are vulnerable or going through a hard time, there's nothing I dislike more than saying, call this organization, and giving a phone number. So what I've made a commitment to do is to say, let's do a warm handoff where we're going to call this person together right now. I've hugged this person. I've shaken their hand. Like, I know who they are. I know you're in good hands. And I think, so for us to have that opportunity to build relationships at the community partnership with each other, when we're with somebody and we're needing to partner to wrap around them, it's so much easier to do because we've already got a trust, right?
Yeah.
Like if I know I'm sending somebody to Joe Halco, I can say, I've met this person, I know who it is. It's not just this kind of like, here's an organization and number, good luck.
Yeah.
Like we share each other's referral systems, we share each other's, as you said, the services we provide. I think it's really important that we as service providers are informed on the services we're providing too. So it's not just, here's your food resources, here's your housing resources, but here's your food resources and you'll meet Jess Graff, you'll meet Tony, you'll meet Brother Bob. Here's your housing, you'll meet Jess, you'll meet Robert, you'll meet Ben. So really being able to be connected and having that relationship with the individuals we're referring to. So that way, like you said, it isn't any one organization. It takes a village to keep a village healthy.
Yeah.
So being able to continue that communication and follow up and know the process so we can tell the person, when you go, you can expect that you're going to be asked this or you're going to be given this tool. And it just helps a person feel more supported. And it helps when sometimes systems can be confusing. When we know them amongst each other, at least we're not passing it on to the vulnerable person to navigate because we've already got that piece figured out. So it just all together, when you look at like the goals of the partnership to have healthier communities, we've got to stay in regular contact and communication to do that. And people change, right? Jobs change.
Yeah.
COVID was a great example of that.
Absolutely. And let's face it, with so much of this, stigma is at the forefront. So the more comfortable you can make it for someone on a warm handoff, the better, because they're not so like feeling isolated,
Exactly.
like it's only them.
Right. And I think about too, like, when COVID had happened and everybody's kind of retreating back to working from home, remotely, virtually. And what that did is so many people's mental health, both people who, we were serving and the servers themselves, so to speak. There was a lot of changes in who's in what position, people retiring, people moving. And one of the only steadfast commitments or groups that I've seen that stuck it through was the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership. So while there were other initiatives and meetings that were happening, there were very few that actually continued with kind of that core group and were strong enough to be able to know that, some of these key people left, but here are the new people in that position. And just, that's one of the reasons why the community partnership, is so valuable to this community, because it's been around pretty much the longest, as far as I know, of different meetings and had the same name since the beginning. And it's always had consistent attendance, even though we know that it's gone up and down.
Sure.
And it's also been that opportunity for any organization to present, to have a chance to share what they do, to have a chance to shine. And for other organizations, like you said, who may never even know this place exists, get to hear a little bit of the ins and outs and then have an additional tool to offer people.
Yeah, so true. So, besides the monthly meeting that we've talked about, what other ways has the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership members been kept informed on community activities?
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about the partnership is that we have weekly updates. So we invite people to share, whether it's, a flyer about an event that's going to be happening, trainings that are happening, different initiatives. They can email either you, sometimes they still email you, or they email the FGI Community Partnership email. And then we're able to collect all of those from week to week and do a weekly update. And I think, again, on the listserv with that update, there's 380 plus people on it. So it's a great opportunity to keep the communication going. So, and especially if people miss the meeting, right? Like sometimes people can't make every meeting, but they'll be able to get the email that includes PowerPoints from the presenter, some of the conversation, the meeting minutes, the attendees' gratitude moments. That's one thing I want to highlight with this group. It's critical to be focused, professional, and hit on goals and objectives, and also to feel connected. So we open the meeting with people saying their name, organization, and something they're grateful for.
Yeah.
And that alone, I believe, shifts the brain chemistry of people who have attended, because we never know what people are walking in with. They might have tripped over the dog, or the kids were late for school. Like, we
Sure.
never know,
Yeah.
and it's one of the first things in the morning. But when you're around a table with your partners talking about something you're grateful for, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the meeting, because we talk about some pretty difficult things in those meetings. So it's nice to be in kind of a solution focus before we get into the meat and potatoes, and then it's easier to kind of close on that positive end. Like, we talk through some challenging things happening, and we also talk through some potential solutions as partners that we can address these things. So the communication is key to work smoothly and collaboratively. And having the weekly updates with the different events and objectives and PowerPoints, the flyers, and then also the meeting minutes. And then we also distribute the attendance so people can look up down the road, who was that presenter? How can I reach them? What's their email address? So I've learned how valuable that is to some of the partners I work with in other areas of the states, because they don't have anything like that. They don't have a listserv that large. So we're fortunate. We're really blessed in Franklin-Grand Isle County to have this.
Yeah, and you're right, that listserv, I mean, let's face it, we're 380 people in the room. That would be interesting. But it's just being able to keep those individuals kind of aware of some of the things that are going on, like you said, even though they can't be at the meeting. So if they're interested, it doesn't take long to go through that email and any of the attachments on as you look at what the various activities, like you said, trainings. It could be virtually anything that an organization is doing to try to move things forward. It could be a fundraiser, it could be an event, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the third annual Substance Use Addiction Summit coming up on Friday, July 19th, 2024 at the Champlain Valley Expo. But that's a great example of an initiative that is not just statewide. We have partners coming from various states, New York, Maine, New Hampshire, and it's free booth registration, free attendance for the public, and having that email blast out to those partners. Having done that, we've had a number of community partners that have registered booths. And that's just one example of, especially for smaller nonprofits, here's an event that you can go and table at, share about what you do. It's not going to cost you anything. There's no booth registration. And also, the target audience is the public. Yeah. Anybody from the public can come incognito, and maybe they're interested in mental health services or substance use or whatever it might be, and they don't want to have to register and give their name and insurance, date of birth, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
And that's just one of many. I mean, there's so many great events that have been shared through the weekly updates, and that increases attendance, awareness, partnership. We've seen these events, especially the annual ones, grow. The In Their Shoes, today there's a job fair. Like, the attendance and participation increases because, I don't know about you, Joe, but sometimes I need to see something multiple times before I make sure to put it in my calendar.
Oh, yeah.
So getting those regular updates can be helpful.
Yeah, that is a norm. And you're absolutely right. And it really has helped a lot of organizations with whatever it is that they're trying to promote, to have that kind of visibility on a weekly basis.
Yep. So. Yeah, and the nice thing too is that they have, sometimes there's a number of different meetings where people might plan on wanting to give an announcement that there's this event coming up and whatnot, and then sometimes things happen. People don't make it to meetings, but the beauty of it is, even if they can't physically attend certain meetings, you can always rely on the community partnership, because it has been there year after year after year to share those weekly updates. And then people can go back and look too, which is nice. Yeah. I've talked to a number of partners, a lot of community leaders that will say, I heard about this thing and then I decided to go back and look, because we don't always read every email we get, right? But then we hear, so-and-so put it in the weekly updates. And then they can go back and get that information. So it's nice that you have something to reflect back onto, even if in the moment there's not enough time to go through all of those initiatives. Yeah. They're available when needed.
Yeah, that's so true. One area that we've struggled with has been to get participation from for-profit businesses in the community to come to the table at these meetings each month. And wouldn't having a representative from a company's human resources department be beneficial? I think of all of the various ways that an HR person can learn about ways to help the people they employ through the partnership to keep them productive, so that maybe they're not missing work or what have you. I mean,
I couldn't agree more. I think that, and I don't, it's interesting because I know that's a focus we've wanted to, how can we get
Yeah.
employers to the table, corporations to the table? And it's been one of those things where it's like, we know that it would be beneficial, and for them, it would be so strategic to do that. Because the issues that we talk about in those meetings are human issues. People that it's not any specific piece of the population, it is everyone, right? So these employers who are employing people that might be struggling with mental health, substance use, even physical health, or even just their children looking for more resources. I mean, that's the thing, is we have such a broad spectrum of service providers at the table, and there's so many resources and opportunity. And like you said, we as service providers leave a meeting realizing, wow, I didn't realize they do all that. Could you imagine these organizations who are never at meetings like this, and they just see a name and a pamphlet, and it's hard to really capture what is truly available? So I look at how beneficial it would be for people to talk to corporations, employers, to human resources departments, and share. And I'm hoping that some of them will watch the show and learn, because a lot of people have heard of the community partnership, but they don't really understand exactly what it is. And the most, again, in my opinion, the most strategic thing that a human resources department could do is have a physical presence. And the beauty is we send out an agenda in advance. So not every presenter is going to be applicable or appropriate for somebody to use their time on, but they can pick and choose. When they see, wow, this is an area that a lot of our employees struggle with, let's have somebody go so they can get the information to share. Like, that's the beauty of it, is it not like people have to go every single meeting. Pick and choose what works.
Yeah, that, and for the organizations that have, say, more than one person in the HR department, they can even rotate. Like somebody goes 1 month, somebody, so it isn't as if they have to be at every single meeting.
Right.
But I think having a presence, though, and learning some of what is available for those that are working for them would be advantageous, because we all know when an employee misses work for whatever the reason is, that downtime and the impact that it has, especially when you're talking about like manufacturing organizations, is huge.
Yep. And that's the thing, is I know there's even, you think of like United Way and Working Fields, there are so many different staffing agencies, service providers that partner with Hireability. Like, there's so many great partners that different employers could partner with that maybe they don't even know about. And it would do nothing but benefit the health and well-being of their employees, which of course we know increases production, increases attendance, and not to mention the most important piece is having happy, healthier people coming into work every day, right? And not only that, but I think about, we're pretty fortunate that we have the ears of our legislators twice a year. That's something that is unique. I think about earlier when you asked, how is this meeting different than other meetings? This meeting, every June and December, we invite our legislators, as you know, those presenters, so to speak, right? Like the subject is always reserved in advance for our legislators, so we can get updates from them, and so we can share and hear what they have to say. That's unique. That's not something that I see other areas of the state. Not that I'm saying it doesn't happen. I just don't know that it happens in such a strategic way, with these key leaders showing up to a meeting, having the ears of our legislators, and being able to get those updates the way that we do.
Yeah, and I think it's really a great we're talking about engagement, and the fact is that everything that goes on, every session, is not popular with all the organizations that might be around the table. But it is an opportunity to at least, once again, be able to plead your case, explain why it's important, and maybe in next session, who knows, maybe something can come to the forefront. But boy, it really is an opportunity, though, to keep those lines of communication open, and, as you say, build relationships, and then even during the session, being able to provide information so that they can maybe balance some misinformation that they're getting from someone else.
Yeah, I think of that even just this year alone, and that's something that I've taken advantage of, having those, the contact information for our legislators, having been able to meet them in person, year after year. And sometimes, as you know, sometimes there's new people who are voted on, and having that meeting to physically get to meet them before the meeting, shake hands, talk about different things. They want to hear from us. They want to hear from us. And I think that sometimes it's assumed that they're able to be professionals in all things, right? Because they're representing, like they can't know all things unless we talk to them.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a perfect opportunity to do that. And also because of building those relationships, we're able to, like I have a couple of them that I texted, hey, this bill is going to be coming on the table and this was what I was talking about at the partnership, so just being able to, have a point of like reference to say, hey, when we had that conversation, this was the bill I was talking about. Yep. So I think it's unique to have the ability to know that, and we've been fortunate. The attendance has increased a pretty decent amount over the years. So having them show up, and of course, June 5th is the next community partnership meeting and happens to be our legislative meeting. So now we can get some updates from our legislators, some overviews, hear how things went, be able to, like you said, plant seeds, talk about things, and also know, like, we're not everybody gets everything that they want, but at least having the opportunity to do the action, get it out, and then at least we've done our part. We've informed and then leave the results up to the power that be. But if we don't share information and just assume they know, that can be dangerous.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind, there's a couple of things. Number one is they're not full-time legislators. So that we have to always keep in mind. And number two is that, we're all expressing our wishes, but so too are people in their ear for transportation and agriculture and the climate and, all the various areas that there are advocates who are trying to get their ear as well. So it's not as if we're the only ones who are saying, hey, by the way, listen to us. So that has to be kept in mind as well. And small state, budget's only so big.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of the puzzle that is very, very difficult. So, I don't envy the job they have. But certainly I know the organizations that are part of this group certainly every year want to, as best as they can, be able to shake a few dollars for their particular organization and what they do. Because let's face it, inflation isn't going away.
Right.
It's sometimes very hard to keep staff because maybe certain organizations can't be as competitively priced as others as far as what they can offer. But at any rate, I just think it's very important that we do have the opportunity twice a year to be able to be in a room with them and to be able to just talk about certain aspects, whether it's pre-session or, as you say, on June 5th, post-session. And I know there's some hard conversations sometimes that have to be had, but better to be able to have those than not have them at all and have misunderstanding.
Well, yeah, and I love that you mentioned even like the budgeting piece and that, of course, I remember somebody that we respect highly that used to say, well, if you give us the funding, we can do the work. So funding is obviously a big piece.
Yeah.
And yet the other thing I think about, and this is more to speak to the value of the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership, is that sometimes change can happen and it doesn't really need a lot more funding as much as it just needs stronger partnership and systems change. So I think that's the beauty of it, is that is there a need for funding? There's always needs for funding, right? And also, can we still make changes if funding is not available at that time? We can by getting creative and thinking in an innovative way as community partners, breaking down some silos and coming up with new ways to address and respond to some of the issues we see. And I think of that as one of the most positive outcomes that I've seen in the partnership over the years, is being able to effectively make change in the community without necessarily having received a grant or getting funding. So do we need and want more funding? Absolutely, it's necessary. And also, sometimes when it's just not an option, that's the beauty of this team, because then you still get these partners who are very talented and thinking strategically and applying for there's federal grants out there that we as community members have filed with 12, 13 different organizations. So that's, again, the value of the partnership, is that it's not just the monetary value of learning about funding opportunities or grants, but also just in partnership, how much change we can make without receiving one penny in addition to make some of those changes.
Yeah, and you're right, collaborating. So believe it or not, our time is up. This has gone extremely quickly, Melinda, as I thought it would. But I do want to thank my guest, Melinda White, for sharing her insights on the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership and the role that it plays in our community. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about NCSS and all of our programs and services by logging on to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Halco, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.